Hey, Steve.
Hey, Yusuf. Great to see you again.
You too. This is exciting times for us and for Teckel because we've just launched version 1.1.41 on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store with a huge upgrade with regard to Teckel AI. The main point being, in the old days, you could only talk to ChatGPT and Gemini in a kind of limited way. But now we've opened it up to the five major large language models: ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, DeepSeek, and Claude, plus all the common variants within those families. And you can have conversations with all of them or a subset of them, and they can talk to each other during that conversation. And what we want to talk about today is basically how you do that, the workflow involved for having a multi AI chat session with a kind of natural flow to the conversation in the way that you would talk to a group of five people sitting in a room. You'd be having a discussion. We want to try to, we've tried to replicate that experience in the way we set this up. So shall we just launch straight in and give it a go and talk people through how they can use Teckel AI to get the most out of these large language models in their day-to-day work?
Yeah, I think that would be great, Yusuf. Why don't you dive in? Why don't you ask him if it's if coffee is good to drink or not?
Okay. Well, the first thing you do is you go to the home page and you launch the the Teckel Talk Launchpad, and you choose Teckel AI Chat. And I've already set this up with five. You can see I've selected five AIs: Gemini, ChatGPT, Perplexity, DeepSeek, and Claude. I could go in and deselect some of those if I wanted to and just have a limited set. But just for this demonstration, we're going to activate all of these models. And we're going to turn CrossTalk off for now. We'll talk about that later. And the very first thing we're going to do is just ask them about coffee. So what was the question? Is coffee good for you? Something as simple as that. Or do we want to be more elaborate and say, is too much coffee good for you, or is a lot of coffee good for you? What do you think?
Uh, just keep it simple. See
All
what
right.
they say.
Oh, that's a very good point, Steve. Keep it simple. One of the things, these large language models, they tend to be a little bit wordy. They like to talk. So what we've put in is the ability to put in system commands, and people will know from their own experience with the language models that there's a special type of prompt called a system command. Not all the models support it directly, but most of them do, which allows you to guide them in their response in a general way. So we've done that using this bullhorn icon, on the app, which if I touch the bullhorn, you'll see it's preset to keep it short and concise. So I'll leave it at that. But here you could put any system message you like, and you can do as many as you like, and you can do them whenever you like. So just as the conversation flows, you can actually add different system messages as you go. But we'll ask them to keep it short and concise because they do tend to be a little bit wordy. And I'm just going to say, is coffee good for you? And I'm going to hit the button and just let's see what these models say. They'll go through one after the other and they'll respond directly to that question. So here we go. So at the top, it said Gemini was thinking. Now it's saying ChatGPT's thinking. And then Perplexity is now thinking. Well, that's quite a long answer. So even though we asked ChatGPT to keep it short, it's can't help itself. Perplexity is an interesting one, Steve, because it by default it does elaborate web searches, and in the settings of Teckel, you can go in and actually whitelist or blacklist the domains and domains as well as specific websites that you want it always to go to or never to go to, and any combination of that. So it's a very nice way of doing AI deep learning type large language model analysis combined with web search. The others offer that in various guises, often at quite an additional expense. So for now, within Teckel AI, we just enable the web search in the Perplexity model because it's built in. Okay, so all the models have now answered. Let's just quickly go down and see what they've said. This is quite interesting. We have Gemini was nice and concise. Moderate coffee consumption may offer some health benefits, but excessive intake can be detrimental. Depends on the individual. ChatGPT says generally yes in moderation. Pros, lots of cons. Tips, aim for about 3 to 4 cups a day, blah, blah, blah. Perplexity, it can be good for you when consumed in moderation. But it does talk about significant drawbacks. Looking at this, it would appear that there are more cons than pros to coffee. Too much caffeine, anxiety. Okay, this is quite nice that in this first response, DeepSeek has come back with the bottom line. For the average person, black coffee in moderation is likely more beneficial than harmful. If you enjoy it and don't experience negative side effects, it can be part of a healthy diet. And Claude is also saying coffee can be beneficial when consumed in moderation. So they've all kind of said the same thing. Out of those responses, I get the impression that perhaps Perplexity might be the one we want to just ask, just to demonstrate CrossListen. We just want to ask one or more of them, a subset of them, specifically. We want to, that's why there's a pointy finger icon. We want to point at one or more of these models, not all of them, but a couple of them, and ask them a directed question. And the others will listen. They'll listen to that happening, but they'll not respond. So this is really, you're in the room with 5 people and you're having a conversation. You first opened it to everyone and they all gave their initial feedback, which is what's happened here. But now you want to point to one or two of them and get them to comment in more detail. So that's what CrossListen is. So let's say, just for the sake of argument, we'll CrossListen, and when you tap the CrossListen button, you see it says select a subset of models to respond directly to the next prompt. The others will listen quietly. So we're all still in the room. We've all had our first say, and now you as the moderator, you want to pick one or two of them or more to give a more detailed response that the others will not respond to, because we don't want to clutter the space with everyone always talking every time. So let's say, I think Perplexity and DeepSeek, they gave some pretty detailed responses first time round. So let's cross-listen. The others will listen, but these two will respond directly to the next question I ask.
Yusuf.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and ask them about, I forgot the name of the substance. You probably remember. It's the known carcinogen that's in coffee. I know in California where I am, the coffee shops have to have a little warning sign saying, I think in California they call it's Proposition 65. That's the name of the law, but it says, warning: if you drink coffee, you will be subject to substances known to cause cancer by the state of California.
Well, I'll tell you what.
It's I forgot, I know the World Health Organization lists it. I just forgot the name of it.
Well, why don't we ask them? Why don't we say to those two? I've selected those two. Is coffee carcinogenic? And then hopefully they'll go off and tell us what that product might be that's inside the coffee. So will I ask that, Steve, to those two and have everyone else listen and let's just see what these two said? Because I would say just superficially they seem to give the more detailed answers first time round. So I'm going to, so when I hit the button, you will see that only Perplexity and DeepSeek will start thinking on this, not the rest of them. So here we go. Perplexity's already started thinking on that question as a follow-up question. So we got an answer, and DeepSeek is now thinking. I'm just going to look at Perplexity's answer and see. I think the content that you're talking about is acrylamide.
Oh yeah, that's it.
The
Acrylamide.
chemical formed during the roasting. So that's interesting. So Perplexity does say that. Perplexity has said here. Sorry, just scroll up. Gosh, it's quite a long answer. So coffee in itself is not a carcinogenic, but sorry, I'm just finding it's a lot of information. Okay, scroll down. So coffee itself is not considered carcinogenic. In fact, many studies suggest it may reduce the risk of certain cancers, particularly liver cancer. That's interesting. However, and while coffee contains acrylamide, a chemical formed during the roasting, classified as a probable carcinogen in animals, the studies in humans have not found consistent evidence that acrylamide from coffee increases cancer risk. The main cancer risk related to coffee is linked to drinking very hot beverages above 65 centigrade due to thermal injury to the esophagus, not the coffee itself. So that's what Perplexity says, and Perplexity gives all the web references. But we can go to what DeepSeek says. Excellent question. The short answer is no. According to current major health organizations, coffee is not considered a carcinogen and is actually associated with a lower risk of certain cancers. That's what Perplexity said too, a lower risk. This is a significant shift from older beliefs. So, and then it goes on to give a bit of history. Liver cancer, which Perplexity mentioned, consistent evidence shows a significantly lower risk of liver cancer and cirrhosis. And what about acrylamide? Common point of concern, and that is classified as a probable human carcinogen based on high-dose animal studies. But what DeepSeek is saying, the critical point here is dose. The amount in coffee is very low. And the studies have not found that drinking coffee increases the cancer risk due to that. Major reversal from the World Health Organization, the leading global authorities have basically exonerated coffee as a cause of cancer. And the acrylamide is not a major concern in coffee. And DeepSeek then gives a nice bottom line. Based on the most current and comprehensive scientific evidence, you don't need to worry about coffee being carcinogenic. For most people, moderate consumption is considered safe and may even offer some protective health benefits. So how does that play with what your preconceived notion was on this, Steve? You got any comment?
No, I think it's great because I didn't have all the data because I haven't deeply researched it. I've just heard things from other people and little that I've read. And of course, if you walk into any Starbucks in the state of California, you'll see this little sign posted on the wall, which is just, due to the law called Proposition 65 in the state of California, which basically warns people. And it doesn't even call out acrylamide. It may call it out, but I don't think it does. It just says, harmful substances that have been known to possibly cause cancer, etc. So, I love the extra information, and it'd be interesting now to see what the other models say, right, about that, because they've been listening.
They have, and in fact, what we can do is we can go back into CrossListen, and we can bring the other models in, but exclude the models that have just answered. So just to, again, to declutter, we could include them, but they would just tend to go over what they've said before. So let's just ask Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude what they think about what has just been said. So that's why I've selected them in CrossListen. So we'll just go back and do you want to add anything? And the point here is, by me saying, do you want to add anything at this stage, to those three in CrossListen who were not part of the previous CrossListen, those three will have listened across the room. But now we're asking them to comment. And the other two who've just commented will remain silent. But interestingly, they will listen to the comments that the other three are about to make. So here we go. So we can expect Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude to pipe up now and give their views on what has just been said by the two previously. So here we go. Gemini's already. Gemini, you know, interestingly, playing with these models, Gemini responds very quickly, is my experience, Steve, in playing with teckel AI. Some of the other models take a bit longer. Okay, so they've all answered, and Claude, who was last to answer, says both sources provide robust, scientifically backed evidence that coffee is not carcinogenic, and goes off to mention the key points. But the thing that's important here is Claude, as you can see, is saying both sources provide robust, scientifically backed evidence. So that shows you how in the cross-listen follow-up, Claude has picked up indeed on what the other two have just said. So we're building a conversation, a layered conversation with directed prompting within a sort of common room of chat. I think that's unique. I don't see this anywhere else. That's kind of why we built it. The motivation, as you'll recall, Steve, was to be able to de-hallucinate, is to use 5 models rather than 1 or 2 to mitigate the risks of hallucination, because all the models will hallucinate. They're trained in a biased way to always give some kind of answer, even if it's the wrong answer. They'd rather give a wrong answer than admit that they don't know. And this is a problem, actually. This was an article that you pointed out to me a few weeks back that explained that one of the weaknesses and one of the sources of hallucination is indeed because of poor incentivization. The models are incentivized to waffle rather than to admit that they don't know. So that's good. Claude has said that. ChatGPT says similarly, a nice summary, a quick few add-ons. And Gemini said to the question of do you want to add anything? Gemini said, actually answered it explicitly, said no. I think the previous responses adequately address the question of coffee and cancer risk. The consensus is clear. Blah blah blah. Current evidence. So that's the demonstration of using CrossListen. We did it twice with different targeted models from the pointing. But now let's talk about CrossTalk, which has been revived significantly since the last release. And the common use of CrossTalk in this kind of setting, I would say, and in terms of a workflow, is to summarize and consolidate the findings and have the models talk to one another directly, not having just us, me, you as the human moderators. And so how we can do that is we can go to the crosstalk button, and instead of it being set to 0, which basically eliminates any crosstalk, let's set it to 1 to save, again, declutter. But we can set it to anything. But now what that means is when we ask the next question, all of them will answer, excuse me, first time through, but then each of them will answer again to what everyone else has said within themselves. So they will talk to one another one round and then come back to us at the very end. If we'd set that to 2, they would go back to one another twice. or 3 times, or 4 times, or 5 times. I think we set the limit to 10 because they do tend to flatten out and all start to agree in a kind of sycophantic manner, I've found. But XTalk 1 is a nice setting, and what I'm just going to say, I'll just say to all of them, consolidate the responses, and summarize concisely. I'll just say concisely in here, just in case they have sort of lost a track on the bullhorn. So I'm saying now to all the models, consolidate responses and summarize concisely with crosstalk set to 1. So they'll do all of that once through listening to me, but then they'll talk to one another and consolidate and summarize what each of them is saying to one another in the chat conversation room, and that will be the end of the chat. So I'm going to hit the button now. Gemini will start and they'll flow through, and they'll go through twice. So you'll see Gemini's thinking, and it says initial response. Now ChatGPT's on it. That initial response is the 0th pass of the crosstalk. So they're all having a go at responding to the prompt I've just given. Perplexity's on it now, and then DeepSeek and Claude will do the same. But then you'll see, because we've got crosstalk set to 1, then it'll go back to Gemini, and Gemini will then say up here, Gemini processing crosstalk 1 of 1. And that's when it has listened to what all the others have said in this pass, and it will consider that and give a response. There it is. Now Gemini's done. Now ChatGPT's thinking crosstalk 1 of 1. So ChatGPT's taking on board everything that the others have said in the last run, and consolidating and summarizing. Perplexity is now on. So when they finish, we should have 5 views, but we can typically just look at the last one because they're all basically doing the same thing. They're all been given the traditional summarization task that people often give to these models because they're very good at it. Being language models, they're very good at summarizing language. And so Claude is now on it. That's the last one. And when it's finished, we'll take a look. Coffee and cancer, concise summary. Key findings, not carcinogenic, may reduce liver and endometrial cancer, safe in moderate amounts. Primary risks, very hot temperature and caffeine-related side effects. Bottom line, coffee is safe and potentially beneficial when consumed responsibly. And going up, the others are basically saying the same thing. Coffee and cancer, the final summary. And then going up, the others are doing the same. Here is a concise synthesis of the scientific consensus. And so basically, here's a concise, ChatGPT saying here's a concise synthesis from the sources. So what's happening now is they've all come to basically the same conclusion. The crosstalk has been effective. And now what you could do is, if you have a preferred model, you can go off and explore further with that preferred model. But as we say, it's now safe in the knowledge that the other 4 models have had something to say. So if there was any risk of hallucination, that will have been largely mitigated now. And this demonstrates the power of teckel AI to perform a multi-AI chat in a conversational manner where you can individually direct the chat in the flow of the chat and then have them all to join back in again and then crosstalk with one another. I think that's really the key goal of this podcast, Steve, is to get these points across. How do you use these new features in your use of teckel AI? And I think that's probably all we need to say at this point, unless there's something you'd like to add that we might have missed.
Well, maybe just go through some of the other functions in the app, such as choosing the model, Yusuf, and then also the PDF function. That might be good for our viewers to understand that a little bit.
Okay, well, why don't I start with that, because that's probably something you'll do more often than not. So top right of the screen, and this isn't new, this was there before, you can hit the PDF button before you go out of the session. If you want to keep a transcript of the session, you must do this before you leave the session because it's not stored anywhere on the device after the session ends. So now what's happening is the entire conversation chat is being sent to a PDF file, and from there you can forward it to yourself in any of your preferred media, email, or any of the other social media outlets that you like, and you can keep a documented archive of the chat, and that's a nice, useful thing to do. It's taken a bit of time to do that on there. While that's spinning, I'll also look at the model selection. So if you hit the model selector, within each family of model, you can choose the corresponding variant. So these examples, just to save time and cost, because all these vendors do charge to use these models, we've used the Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite. You can see we've got the 2.5 Flash and the 2.5 Pro. Those models are all available to choose. ChatGPT, you can choose from 4.1 to 5, and you can choose the Nano, the Mini, and the Pro, or the full version of ChatGPT. And likewise, Perplexity has, they call it Sonar Reasoning, Deep Research, Reasoning Pro, Sonar Pro, etc. So you can select which models you would like in each family to respond in the chat, which is nice. And then I should say, importantly, within a model selection, you can also go in and hit the cogs at the end there, and you can set what we call the parameters of the large language models. People may not know what these are, but these models actually have some free parameters that you can set. A thing called temperature, which is kind of the degree of randomization. If you're doing very crisp coding, you'll set the temperature to one extreme because you really just want it to write software code and not to be too creative about it. You want it to be accurate. Whereas if you set the temperature at the other extreme, if you're writing prose or creative writing, that's the typical use of the temperature parameter. The most important one at the outset is this max output tokens. All the models require that, and depending on the variant within the family, that has to be set quite precisely. So for example, if you set it for a fairly large number because you're using one of the more complex models, they tend to require large max output tokens to be set. And then you go back to one of the simple models within that family, the model may not run actually. They're a little bit brittle, the way they respond to these things. So the max output tokens is almost the first place you start if you find that the models are not responding. It's because the way that these companies have written these APIs is a little bit brittle, and you basically have to nurse them along a little bit. The other parameters are much less sensitive, but the max output tokens is one where you do need to take some care. So that PDF it seems to be stalling a little. So I think that's it, Steve. That's all I wanted to say for now.
Okay, yeah, it's been great use. Thanks for going through that. Hopefully our viewers will really understand the benefit of this. I think it's a huge time saver, and it's just, like you said, it mitigates the hallucination because of the way these models are trained. Statistically, it makes sense for them to come up with a guess if they don't know an exact answer, rather than no answer at all. It's just the way the models are trained, because they're always wanting to provide some sort of answer that is the correct answer. So this, I think that what we've done here with Teckel AI is really mitigates that a lot, and we've seen that in other examples. So so anyway, hey, I think that's a great cutoff time for us, Yus. Thanks a lot for your time, and we're gonna do another one of these soon. Our next upgrade will be on Teckel Talk. We're gonna basically talk about walkie-talkie mode, which is in development right now.
Yeah.
And won't go into too many details about walkie-talkie mode, but that's going to be our next exciting upgrade that we'll be doing a podcast on next. So anyway, hey, signing off here from California, Yusuf.
Yeah, all
Thanks
the very best, Steve. Great. Talk to you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.